Hey everybody, welcome back to BobkeTV. Get set for another broom wagon. Up first, the good, the bad, and the ugly from Paris-Nice and Tirreno Adriatico. Musette Musings. Wiggins. Brailsford. Froome. Sky. The hits just keep coming. All that on the Musette Musings. And of course, tweets of the week. Taylor Finney in the house. All of that on the broom wagon. Okay, everybody, Marc Soler to the good in Paris-Nice, the young Spaniard, just 24, winner of Tour de l'Avenir in 2015, which invoked the inevitable comparisons to Miguel Indurain. Whether that proves to be a burden in the future, time will tell. It happens in France all the time. Solid young professional compared to Bernard Hinault, never does anything. And Belgium too. Solid young professional, never does anything. Comparisons to Eddie Merckx go on and on and haunt that rider throughout their career. Let's see what happens to Marc Soler. It's a sort of it's a trend. It's a thing in professional cycling. I guess that's probably true in many other sports, but especially in cycling, especially for the French and Belgians who have not had tour winner. The French, I think it's 33 years at this year's tour, without a winner. The Belgians, maybe even longer. I'd have to look at the record books, but even going back further, baby. Anyways, Marc Soler, he had a very measured, very tactically astute, and very prudent Paris-Nice, and that was the difference. The yellow jersey of race leader Paris-Nice, a very hot potato to handle, got passed around. Luis Leon Sanchez, Wout Poels got close, Simon Yates, but blammo. Last day of the race, Marc Soler goes on the attack with a long ways to go, joined by David De La Cruz and Omar Freila, and the three Spaniards drill it to the finish. Also to the good, De La Cruz with the stage win on the final day, putting Simon Yates into all kinds of difficulty, and we'll get to that in a second. But Soler, a deserving winner, a very clever and powerful display of patience, belying his age, just 24. And I think getting the jersey before the last day would have been hard to defend, as it proved to be for everybody. Luis Leon Sanchez had a good run at it, ran out of speed on stage number 6, I believe. Simon Yates got that win, big win for Simon Yates on stage 7. And then he lost the jersey to Marc Soler. So man of the hour, Marc Soler of the Movistar squad, big star in Spanish cycling. He's had a good start of the year. Ruta del Sol, 3rd in that stage race against the best in the world. So Marc Soler, watch for him to be solid in the Grand Tours that he participates in this year. Don't think he's at the level needed to be on the podium just yet, but a possibility in Soler's future, especially if he doesn't take on the pressure of being compared to Miguel Indurain for the rest of his life. Also to the good, Dylan Groenewegen. Powerful stage win against the sprinters. One of the few sprint stages it turned out to be. But Dylan Groenewegen on fire this year. Does that mean it's time to replace one of our top 3, the top of the mountain of the sprint game? Kittel, Cav, Greipel? A little premature. I think Greipel will have some big wins this year. Kittel, we'll get to him in a minute. Already starting to fire now in the Tirreno Adriatico. Cavendish, we'll get to him in a little bit also in the ugly in the Tirreno. But Dylan Groenewegen has been the top sprinter so far this year. I don't see that really changing all that much. We might have to have 4 top sprinters by the end of the Vuelta and include Dylan Groenewegen with Cavendish, Kittel, and Greipel. That would be my prediction. I'm not just ready yet to say Greipel will never win again, Cav will never be a consistent winner again. Most certainly Kittel is going to be up there for a long time, and we'll get to that in a second. The French, good ride in Paris-Nice for the French. 4 stage wins, 2 from FDJ. Arnaud Démare, the first stage, got the yellow jersey because of that. And Rudy Mollard, his teammate. Brilliant riding by Mollard, very clever. The stage that he won, he came down to the end with all of the GC contenders. And I thought to myself, who's the least likely guy to win this stage? It was Mollard, and he got the win. So good ride for FDJ. Direct Energy, 2 stage wins for them also. Jonathan Hiver, clever ride to sit on the wheel of Luis Leon Sanchez while he was going for the overall lead. And so Hiver, the beneficiary of Luis Leon Sanchez, is just drilling it in the finale to get that stage win. And Jerome Cousin, a good stage win also for Direct Energy. Sat on Niels Pollitt. Niels Pollitt has some very magnanimous things to say, which I suspected in the commentary, if you guys listen to that on NBC, that rather than give up everything and sit up, he went for the win, even if it cost him, even if it only got him second place. Better second than in the pack. So Cousin, however, will be remembered as a stage winner. The time trial, Wout Poels, excuse me. Big win for Poels, showing us all that he can time trial. And that is huge because of his aspirations to be the leader for Team Sky, theoretically, as long as Team Sky keeps going. More of that in the Musette Musings, that he could lead the team in a Grand Tour. So it doesn't seem like there's any question about that in the future for Wout Poels. Also to the good, Simon Yates, brilliant, hard-earned, all-in stage win, crushed the competition, got the yellow jersey, and he lost it, so maybe going a little bit too hard to get the jersey and the stage win. But a very solid ride by Simon Yates, and really showing us what he's capable of when he doesn't think about anything except going as hard as he can. A very tough man to beat, especially in the mountains. David De La Cruz, good win for the Sky Squad, who at that point were just trying to salvage something out of Paris-Nice. Sergio Henao had lost a lot of time, and we'll get to the bad in a moment. But David De La Cruz, last stage winner, stage 8 in Nice, following the tempo of Omar Freile and Marc Soler, and sat on quite a bit in the finale. But if you want to win a stage in professional cycling, sometimes you have to be a little bit mean. It worked out brilliantly for the stage win because Marc Soler got the overall. David De La Cruz got the stage. But it was a very exciting Paris-Nice. And if it's an indication of how exciting all the stage races are going to be for this year, it's going to be a great season. I mean, it went down to the final few 100 meters. Soler in the finish line, counting the clock down. 4-second time bonus. Simon Yates chasing as hard as the group could. And just falling a few seconds short. Simon Yates, 4-second difference at the end. Great stage race. The bad. TJ Van Garderen did not have a great Paris-Nice by any stretch of the imagination. Started the season well. 3rd place in the Ruta del Sol, Andalusia, but crashing out on stage number 1. Now, if he is going to be a contender for the overall podium for the Grand Tours, he's going to need some more racing miles. So keep an eye on what TJ does next. Maybe the Volta Catalunya that's coming up in a few days. Didn't have any what seemed to be very traumatic injuries, no broken bones when he was assessed by the doctors after the stage, but dropped out as a precaution, and that might cost him unless he can. He's great at training. He's always been very diligent. He's always comes to the races prepared, And I thought that he had a great shot at winning or being on the podium of Paris-Nice at the start because of the long time trial and flattish that suits him more than any of the GC contenders in this year's edition of Paris-Nice, but that was not to be. TJ's going to have to regroup, and see if he can't find another stage race to get back in shape for the rest of his season. Very critical, those race miles, if you want to be successful in the Grand Tours or the Classics or the Worlds or whatever your objectives are. Not great for Dan Martin. Not in contention. Really suffered in the time trial, lost a lot of time there, was not a factor, and dropped out of Paris-Nice on stage number 7, I believe it was. So not a great start for Dan Martin. Also, the bad luck of the Izagirre brothers. On the last stage, they started the day in, I think, 2nd and 4th in the overall standings. Had dropped Simon Yates, were chasing Marc Soler, and got it all wrong. John Izagirre leading his brother Gorka in maybe the last or second to last hairpin bend. Pardon me for laughing, but just overcooking the corner. They both remounted and chased furiously, and maybe that was the difference, because Simon Yates was got a chance to catch up to them in that very select group with Tim Wellens, etc. Just one moment of going too hard into the corner, John crashes, Gorka piles into him. Took a long time to extract his bicycle from that. Simon Yates caught up, and just enough time for Marc Soler and the others to stay ahead and give Soler enough time for the win. The ugly couple of instances, just really not disturbing, but definitely a little bit of nervousness that I felt commentating on number 1, Wout Poels' crash. Over anxious, little bit of a disadvantage coming into a fast corner on a very fast descent, and slid out, trying to come around Tim Wellens, I believe it was, to get back on terms to the 2 riders in front of him, and broke his collarbone out of Paris-Nice when he was in great position, just 15 seconds slower than Luis Leon Sanchez to start that stage, and looking at the mountains to come, and it would not be but an ugly crash for Wout Poels and a broken collarbone as a result. Alessandro De Marchi, I mean, talk about being scared for what might have happened to the guy. We came up on the aftermath of him sliding off the road with just his bicycle and the saddle torn off it, and he had been in the breakaway and got it wrong on a corner too fast, disappearing radius on a blind corner, went under the barrier and down a ravine, was able to crawl back up, get back on his spare bike, and finish the stage. So the ugly could have been a lot worse in Paris-Nice, but luckily for Alessandro De Marchi, no serious injuries, and able to finish the stage. That's it for Paris-Nice. Thrilling race, like I said. It's going to be a great season, and it didn't take long for that to be confirmed at Tirreno Adriatico. Tirreno starts midweek of Paris-Nice, and the first stage of Tirreno this year was the team time trial won by BMC. Maybe in recent years the most dominant team in the team time trial discipline, which bodes well for the Tour de France and Richie Porte. There is one early on in the Tour. I think it's stage 4. And watch for Richie Porte to have an advantage over his rivals because of the team time trial. It might only be a few seconds. It might not make the entire difference at the end of the Tour, but definitely good news for BMC. Every time they see team time trial on the race route of the Tour de France, they have a little bit of an advantage. The good, stage 2, Marcel Kittel. More good in a moment, but for Kittel, no wins so far in 2018, gets his first stage win against Peter Sagan in a thrilling battle on stage number 2. Stage 3, Primož Roglič, thrilling sprint win, attacking with a kilometer to go and holding off all of the GC contenders. for a solid stage win by last year's second place in the World Time Trialing Championships and a stage winner of the Tour de France. Primoz Roglic, former ski jumper, had a horrible crash, convincing him to abandon ski jumping. And for a second career, pretty good. He's already had a phenomenal career. Giro stage win, Tour stage win, and now a stage win in Tirreno Adriatico. Mikel Landa changed from Team Sky. Maybe at the end of the Tour last year was even stronger than Chris Froome, especially in the mountains. He changed teams to Movistar. He'll be teammates with Valverde, Quintana. We'll see how that works out in the Grand Tours to come. But, I mean, Valverde's riding great already. And I'm wondering if Nairo Quintana won't be a little bit nervous of seeing Mikel Landa win a stage of the Tirreno in dominant fashion against the very best in the world. So Landa is on good form so far, even though he changed teams in the offseason. It's always, you know, a question whether or not you're going to race better on a new team. For Mikel Landa, the answer seems to be he will be racing at least as good as he did on Sky for Movistar. And for Team Sky, maybe that's not such good news. And we'll see how that plays out later on in the summer. But that was a solid stage win by Mikel Landa. Also, Adam Yates. Ironically, Adam got the stage win when his brother Simon lost the lead in Paris-Nice. Adam Yates in the Tirreno. Stage 6. Marcel Kittel won the stage. And Fernando Gaviria crashed. Gaviria 7th on stage 2. And Gavi is Kittel's replacement as the top sprinter on Quick-Step. And if you don't think that's in the back of Marcel Kittel's mind every time he lines up against the Quick-Step squad, you don't understand the sprint game. But on stage number 6, it will be remembered for the stupefying acrobatics of Peter Sagan, who, when Gaviria crashed, and, you know, in all honesty, that is a real mistake by Gaviria to fall, getting hung up on his teammate's wheel and going down and out of contention for that sprint stage. He broke his wrist, I believe, and had to drop out and will not be doing Milano-San Remo. So a real blow to Quick-Step and Gaviria. But watch how Peter Sagan locks up his wheels, gets tangled in the bike, clips out, and does not fall down. And then when he's chasing back, in the apex of a corner, jumps up over a curve to move up a couple of more spots rather than hammer the brakes. He did a big chase to catch back up to the Katusha-led peloton and almost beat Kittel in the sprint. And an absolutely staggering level of bike handling skills for Peter Sagan. It's beautiful to watch him race bikes. It gives you hope. And, you know, I've had my problems with the UCI officiating my whole career, my entire journalistic relationship with the sport, and that did not, at the Tour de France, do anything. I mean, it reinforced the poor officiating that plagues the UCI, and an inexcusable disqualification to Peter Sagan at last year's Tour for what we have to mainly remember was not the infraction that Sagan was accused of by Rolf Aldag from Mark Cavendish's team and agreed with by the UCI official at the finish line. So our sport, to move on, needs to resolve that somehow. And we're reminded in stage 6 of Tirreno of just how special Peter Sagan is as a bike racer. Just absolutely phenomenal. The bad at Tirreno. Geraint Thomas. Mechanical issues again. I think that Geraint must be cursed in Italy, and he needs to go to the Duomo in Milano or the Vatican, do a few novenas, light some candles, get his voodoo squared away in Italy. Remember the Giro motorbike that guides the peloton has to be there. It doesn't have to be in the road and hammer the brakes right when the peloton is getting them crashing the 2 leaders of the Sky Squad. Blockhouse undoing of Geraint Thomas's GC in last year's Giro, and a little mechanical incident knocking him out of the lead of Tirreno. And if it wasn't for bad luck, Geraint Thomas would have no luck at all in Italy. Tom Dumoulin, defending Giro champion, bad luck to crash out on the Queen stage also. So how that affects Geraint and Tom Dumoulin in the races to come will remain to be seen. Shouldn't slow Tom Dom down too much, not injured severely in that crash. And he will return to his training and racing in preparation of defending his Giro win from last year. The ugly Mark Cavendish crashing in the team time trial, fractured his rib. Milano-San Remo is a question mark. Stage 1, team time trial, bam, on the deck. Much more devastating than the one in the Abu Dhabi Tour, when the automatic braking system of the lead of the race director's car was activated by the riders around the car. The car brakes automatically, and Cav, pow, piles into the back of it and was out of Abu Dhabi on stage 1. These races are critical to your whole season to get the race miles in you need for your fitness, for your reaction time, for your resistance, for your health. Get back into the rhythm of the racing. Obviously, Cav has as much experience as anybody in professional cycling. But to be competitive, especially at a race like Milano-San Remo, you have to be 100% and have a great day. If you're not there, I would recommend you don't start. Mark has already won Milano-San Remo in his career. He doesn't gain a lot by starting it, has a lot to lose if he crashes again, jeopardizing his whole season. But Dimension Data, he's the star of that program. He's the reason they have been able to bolster their roster and join the World Tour. So a lot of pressure on Mark to start Milano-San Remo, but I don't recommend it. I recommend against it. I don't think he can win. If you want long miles for your fitness, go ahead and do a long training ride. And Milano-San Remo, one thing, avoiding the crashes is critical to winning. And there's crashes all the time in Milano-San Remo. That's not going to change. This is not going to be a crash-free edition. I mean, I wish it would be, but if you look at the last 100+ years, it would suggest to any observer with half a brain that that's an unrealistic expectation and that Mark should probably not start. We'll see what happens. More of that on a future BobkeTV. Anyways, I'm gonna take a break and collect my thoughts, because the Musette Musings are generating the headlines that are going to continue for the foreseeable future. And it's all about Sky, and I'll be right back. All right, up on the Musette Musings this week, it's all about Team Sky. Bradley Wiggins in the headlines, Dave Brailsford, and Chris Froome, obviously with the ongoing salbutamol debacle. But first, a disclaimer. I'd like to get on record for saying that I applaud Team Sky, especially the comprehensive approach to performance for all of its riders on the team, not just the big stars, which is very different. That is not the business model in cycling, most certainly not in my era. My team was better than most, but still, a lot of professional cycling teams have a tendency to focus on a couple of stars, and everybody else is basically in a scramble for resources. And Team Sky, it does help that they have the biggest budget, but that's another thing. Their budget, it's it's adequate or it's sufficient to support the top program in professional cycling. If every team had the same budget, I think the races would be a lot closer and more exciting. You wouldn't see riders like Wout Poels, Michael Kwiatkowski, Sergio Henao, who are capable of leading teams in Grand Tours on the same team. But be that as it may, I'd like to just say that don't have anything against Sky, and I'm just trying to report the facts. And I'm a big fan of Bradley Wiggins and Chris Froome as well. But for the record, I don't have anything, no personal vendettas against Team Sky. Alrighty, first, let's talk about Bradley Wiggins. And he's been, especially in England, in the news quite a bit recently. And Parliament has been looking into a number of things that have gone on with Team Sky and Bradley Wiggins. Corticosteroid injections now, which Bradley said he did not do. Now he's saying it's not against the rules. That's a little bit different. He also said he would have more rights if he had murdered somebody. That is not what an innocent man, that's not the defense, which is a ludicrous comparison, by the way. It's the stupidest thing to compare, pushing the boundaries of doping in professional sports with murder. And generally, you just don't hear somebody use that type of language when they have nothing to hide and are totally innocent. Also, Bradley is apparently involved in a notorious tax evasion scheme called the Cup Trust, which seems to me goes against his political inclinations. But maybe Bradley does not want to pay taxes. Apparently, the Cup Trust has allowed millionaire Brits to evade paying huge amounts of tax, which I'm not sure if that's true, but that does not bode well for Bradley Wiggins' future standing as, I guess he's a Knight of the Realm. I'm not up on my British title giving, but I think he's a Sir. Thankfully, here in the colonies, we don't have to use any of those sobriquets. But very disappointing, honestly. When Bradley Wiggins won the Tour de France, I was right there with everybody, cheering for it, believing it to be clean. It seemed like it. He was embedded with, at the time, if I'm not mistaken, or around that time, with David Walsh, the Irish journalist that did a lot of hard work in exposing what was going on in the U.S. Postal Program. This is many years ago at this point. But David Walsh was embedded with Team Sky and found nothing that would suggest any sort of cheating at the time. So I was in. I believed that Bradley Wiggins was, a clean winner of the Tour de France at the time. Now it's becoming more and more difficult to believe in that. And it seems like with all of these revelations from Team Sky that, and we'll get into those with Dave Brailsford. Oh my God, Brailsford's overseeing some crazy stuff. But for Bradley Wiggins' part of his pieces of the puzzle, which are a lot of it, it seems like they will do everything they can get away with, and then hopefully not have to explain that. But we've seen that is not the case with Bradley Wiggins, and we're going to get to that, the reason why, in a minute. But disappointed that Wiggins is going through so much turmoil and could have been avoided by not using corticosteroids via injection. This is a long-lasting, powerful, big dose injectable corticosteroids 3 times that we know of. each time before a Grand Tour. It's just, that does not suggest to me. Correct me if I'm wrong, and please write in about this. It does not suggest to me that it was random allergy attacks that just happened to happen the week before 3 Grand Tours, where he needed an insane dose of corticosteroids. Maybe that is what happened. And so let me know if you think, and here's maybe the main question: should Bradley Wiggins be allowed to keep his Tour de France title from 2012? Good question for everybody. On to Dave Brailsford, and he's the central character in all of these dramas. So, and going back to the beginning, where Brailsford promised transparency and zero tolerance. Transparency, that's a complete lie. We know that now. We only know about these things that Bradley Wiggins was doing and others because of a hack by Fancy Bear. I guess that's a Russian group of cyber hackers that got into either Team Sky or British Cycling's or WADA. I guess it was WADA, if I remember correctly. Their databases hacked in there and found that Bradley Wiggins had been using these powerful corticosteroids to get ready for the Tour de France and leaked them. So that is absolutely not what my understanding of 100% transparency is. And if we think back to those years when Team Sky was getting started, it was a very volatile landscape, and they had to, if they were going to be as ambitious as they have proven to be, they had to have a stance to attract sponsors whereby there was no tolerance for doping and there was 100% transparency. And that is not the case. So we know about all of this stuff, including Chris Froome's salbutamol, double the allowed amount in his urine sample, through leaks to the media. Zero tolerance, Wiggins' TUEs is a problem. This is a big one. Testosterone patches sent to the headquarters of Team Sky and British Cycling when Dave Brailsford was the managing director, was the performance director, that quote-unquote were sent back because they went to the wrong address. I don't believe that. I find that very difficult to believe. If you believe that, please write in and let me know. I believe the Brooklyn Bridge is for sale also. And this parliamentary committee that's looking into all of these things and making all of these findings is looking into who made out the prescription for those testosterone patches. Was it, as they maintaining, sent to the wrong address? That's just absolutely ludicrous. Chris Froome's twice the amount of salbutamol could fit into the zero tolerance. It just doesn't seem to hold a lot of water. And maybe the most telling is that after Dave Brailsford made these proclamations, Geert Leenders was hired, who is now, if I'm not mistaken, serving a lifetime ban, was hired by Team Sky as a team doctor. Geert Leenders, who was the mastermind of the Rabobank systematic doping program. So to say they have zero tolerance is an absolute joke. So the promises Dave Brailsford made have turned out to be completely empty. And now that we're finding out about the lies and the subterfuge and the 0% transparency, it's time for Dave Brailsford to be asked to remove himself, to go. Those are two reasons why that the promises he made, which is how the team got started, how the team found the funding, are not true. So in any other endeavor, a sporting director or a manager of any type of company that their public reputation is essential to the success of of the company, he would have already been asked to resign because of all of these things and many, many, many more. Let's go on to the most disappointing part of this whole scenario, and for me, it's Chris Froome himself. And he's recently said that he would prefer that the president of the UCI, David Leparchant, speak to him in private rather than comment on the state of the sport publicly, which is his job. That is Leparchant's job. So for Chris Froome to try and control the message is so disappointing. And I'll be honest, when Chris Froome won the Tour, I thought it was fantastic. And I thought, now we have a rider that we can believe in, that that is above board, is racing clean, and is the best of the current generation. That is obvious, and is embroiled in a salbutamol controversy where he had twice the amount allowed in his urine sample, which I've gone over before in the Broom Wagon and on BobkeTV. So I'm not going to get into that specifically, but this is another disappointing turn of events. And if you haven't done anything, you would not say something like that. David Leparchant's job is to comment on what is happening in the sport. And if not just Chris Froome, but anybody is racing under this cloud of suspicion because their case is being tried, being argued, being adjudicated behind closed doors, that's David Leparchant's job. And why Chris Froome wants to control the message, that's disappointing. He was disappointed in Leparchant, but it's much more disappointing in Chris Froome trying to tell the president of the UCI how he should do his job. So, as I said before, let me reiterate real quickly. Chris Froome should have been disqualified from the Vuelta. He should have forfeited his World Championship medals. And by the way, he found out about his salbutamol positive the morning of the time trial where he won a bronze medal. So it could be argued that he keeps his Vuelta but loses his World's medals, because at least the time trial, because he knew about the salbutamol finding, the salbutamol positive already. And he should have been banned for 6 months from racing, and apologized and admitted he took too much salbutamol rather than try to control the message and come up with some preposterous excuses. And by the way, changed his story, saying that he was suffering more than normal from asthma and followed the team doctor's instructions, and that was the initial quote from Chris Froome. Now it's kidney failure. And by the way, Team Sky is saying kidney malfunction. That's not a thing. That's not a medical term. That's like I don't know. That's like, I mean, it just is not a term used in medical science as renal failure or kidney failure, if I'm not mistaken. And believe me, I've had to look into this, which is not my specialty. So please comment on that. I have had mild kidney failure in years past, and whether it was kidney stones or what, I don't know, but I was completely demolished. I was not smashing it off the front in a Grand Tour. That just is not possible. It's totally insane. And to not be able to admit you took too much salbutamol, that's why you had twice as much in your urine. It seems to me, it seems desperate rather than transparent and zero tolerant. So write in. I know these are heated topics, but that's my take on it for the time being. I'm sure that's going to continue to play out. And if we move forward to, which is very possible, to the Giro and the Tour de France, and Chris Froome is racing, and this case has not been adjudicated, total disaster. And that's what Leparchant was saying, and I agree 100% with the UCI director on this. But please comment. Next up is Tweet of the Week. Tweet of the Week coming to us from Taylor Finney. Take a look at these. It's a series of them. Pretty funny. About a conversation he's having during a race with another rider in the peloton, which reminds me of thousands of conversations I had in the peloton. And if I was racing in the era of social media, my career would have lasted about 11 minutes. So, Taylor, best of luck. You have a captive audience, but not a receptive audience in the professional peloton. Okay, everybody, that's the Froome Ragging for this week. See you soon. Bye-bye.